Good afternoon, and today we're going to be reviewing Absolute Green Lantern Volume 1 Without Fear. This is issues 1 to 6 of the Absolute DC line, which is Al Ewing writing, Janoy Lindsay, all art. He actually does pencils, inks, and colors, which is pretty impressive, especially when you see the final results. Lucas Gattoni is supporting on letters. So this one, a few phrases come to mind immediately: reinvention, reordering, giving the story room to breathe. Also, with Al Ewing, as is typical, you're going to get a lot of repeat motifs and a deep dive into language and the whole process unfolding as we find out what everything means in this new iteration of a well-known property, but now in a completely new and often scary world. The central conceit at the start is fascinating. You have a giant block in the shape of a Green Lantern lands on a town in Nevada where you have cops and former cops who you'll be familiar with their names, such as Hal Jordan, Sojourner Mullein, Joe Mullein, Guy Gardner, and John Stewart. Just to mention a few of the people you'd be familiar with. There's other characters throughout, like Hector Hammond, who show up as well, who are connected with the larger part of the Absolute universe. I won't give away the essential kind of storyline, no spoilers here. But gorgeous art, especially the colors by Janoy Lindsay. I'll touch on that a little bit more as we go through. Manga-like pacing and placing of a lot of the elements. I think you'll definitely see some of the touches in anatomy and in the way that Lindsay, just like Ewing in the story, kind of lets things unfold at their own pace. That's the intrigue build, doesn't answer all the questions immediately, which I love, but I understand if some people may find that off-putting or don't have the patience, especially on a monthly basis. But me reading it in the collected edition, it's a little bit different because I'm enjoying it all, but also know I can turn the next page and continue on to the next issue right there. The Absolute line is such an interesting starting off point. I mean, it's a huge success for more reasons than we have time to go into today. But every one of the writers, masterminded by Scott Snyder and helped kind of with suggestions by people as diverse as Joshua Williamson, James Tynan, obviously Kelly Thompson, Jeff Lemire, Al Ewing himself, but every one of the writers have gone in a somewhat different direction from the initial pitch that they made to Scott Snyder for the books when he first came up with the idea and was given the green light by DC to go ahead with it. Probably Batman and Wonder Woman are the closest to just kind of flipping a lot of the aspects of the known mythos and lore on their head. So they maintain a lot of the essential goodness of these characters, the heroic nature, but stacking the odds against them in this kind of dark side influenced universe, which is kind of the whole idea from the post Absolute Power All In birth of this universe, is that it's infected or corrupted from the very beginning by Darkseid's kind of Omega energy. So that's kind of a starting off point. But here Ewing kind of moves the players around the board, changes what they do, etc. And Ewing here does very similar things. This is probably, I mean, Absolute Martian Manhunter is probably the biggest divergence point, to be honest, but that's almost in a category all by itself. But for the other ones, which take the mainstream heroes and kind of flip them around in this new world. This one is probably the biggest seismic shift outside of, like I said, the absolute Martian Manhunter, which is just a whole other conceptual level. Like with Jeff Lemmire's Flash, we saw a similar shift with Wally being younger, more like he was when he was Kid Flash in the Teen Titans, and then shifting around a few pieces like his dad, Barry Allen's role, etc. But this one, to me, it's so interesting the direction Ewing has gone with, because he's kept a lot of the actual words of the central concept, like Green Lantern, Abin Sur, etc. But he's changed the meaning behind each of them right down to the very foundational concept of the Green Lantern as a name and as a thing, even explaining it better when you do get that explanation than it ever has been in all of the Green Lantern history. Ewing even breaks down the new structure, the new kind of basis of the levels of light. And again, I won't spoil it, but it's just ingenious and makes sense to me from the start when you kind of get an inkling of where he's going with it and what it actually means. It's very similar to what he did on the Immortal Thor and the narrative kind of breakdown and reassembling all of the pieces and characters, and what he did with the Immortal Hulk, especially. So this is definitely a favorite of mine, given how much I love both of those series, and the sheer clever writing and no talking down to the audience. The story itself is allowed to breathe, and Ewing never kind of overdoes it or lets anything drag on. He doesn't go into events on, exposition basics, wasting a bunch of time, but he gets on with moving the narrative and letting people kind of put the pieces together themselves. And to me, that's way more satisfying than just something clever being given to you on a plate. When you have to work to kind of connect the pieces together, I think it builds much more of a personal and interactive. Of course, having said that, we do run the risk of losing some people who aren't used to this type of pacing and don't want to have to put in the work, to connect the dots, or don't have the patience. And absolutely no judgment for somebody who has a different taste, to likes different things. But for me, this was well worth the simmer and that kind of slow burn energy that does go somewhere. I think the worst thing is when you have this and it just fizzles out. It doesn't go anywhere. But with a craftsman like Ewing, matching up with a partner like Lindsay on art, it's dynamite. It builds up, and then you get that given climax on it, and yeah, great payoff. The story matched with the gorgeous understated art by Janoy Lindsay is very dynamic with manga undertones and touches, like I mentioned above. The use of color here is definitely something to be called out. Incredible with muted tones to set the stage and then, carry on the actual telling of the story. Um, but then Janoy, who, as I mentioned, did color and ink the book himself, dropping these stunning cinematic special effects moments that really bring the story alive and help visually emphasize the different levels of light when they get into that explanation, and when you see, the transformation of characters and what each of the different kind of lights or colors or aspects of the Green Lantern mythos actually mean in this world here. And I will draw your attention to, I'll include them here, I'll put them up side by side with me here. The Alex Eckman-Lawn variant covers. So some beautiful variant covers, but his ones really stood out to me, and kind of the fact that they're works of art on their own, and it really ties into the moment that we're in at them right now, with the variant cover market, boosting everything. And as David Harper recently pointed out when he was on the Comic Pals podcast in response to a question by Sean, and he was saying that this does make the market healthier if we can maintain a momentum, if we can have follow through versus just a bunch of people coming in who don't care about any of the books and just buying them for speculator value, or even worse, the slabbing. And I'm like a lot of people, I just can't stand the grading and slabbing. Comics are supposed to be read. I get it. Buy an extra copy if you're that big into the investing. But for me, it's kind of an obscenity seeing the slab, like the carbon freezing of so this volume does take us up to issue 6, and I, for one, am excited to get the next collection when that comes out on June the 9th. I've included a link to Amazon in the description if you do want to go ahead and order a copy. It is an affiliate link, so I do get a little percentage off that. I myself got the hardcover version with the impressive looking painted hard cover and the dust cover that looks great in any collection. So let me know what you think, guys. But as always, please hit the like button. A subscription would be great if you would like to keep up and get advance notice of everything else that we're going to be doing on the review channel, the New Holes channel, a couple of other pieces that I'll be adding to it. And obviously, all comments are welcome. Let me know what you liked. Let me know what you thought. If you've read the book, if you're interested in reading it after watching this. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your weekend.